and this will be my final project. So I chose a song called Concentration Camp Blues for my presentation. It is a song written by Frank Wallen. The song is about how reservations were originally like concentration camps and how colonization has set us people up for failure. And I chose this song because it connects to a lot of course themes and it has a strong message in it. The reason why I chose this song is because it came off very powerful to me, and the message that it was giving was something that I felt like needed to be shared. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting to share that information with you guys. Some background information on Frank Wallen is that he's a hip-hop artist, producer, performer from Rosebud Reservations in South Dakota. He also attended Columbia College Chicago, where he received a bachelor's in audio arts and acoustics. He does produce all of his music, and he even plays instruments for the recordings. And his music background helps him do that. He also has 3 Native American Music Awards and has been published by many different publications having to do with Native American contemporary issues. He travels the world. He travels the world telling his story through performance and doing workshops focusing on self-empowerment and expression of truth. As you can tell, he's very passionate about what he is teaching, and he has a great platform with his music, and clearly is very influential and is able to get his point across as much as he needs to. As you could probably assume, there's definitely some history behind the song that I think is valuable information. So in this song, he says that he was raised by the women in his family and that most of the adults he grew up around were in jail or on drugs. He talks about how the trauma of his ancestors are still affecting his people to this day, and that the limiting of self-expression by colonizers has caused this to happen. The reason why I find this significant is because he is basically saying that the way that his people were treated and sent into reservations was more like forcefully putting people in concentration camps, and that the trauma of his ancestors has been pushed so far into like who they are as people that they've fallen into drugs and crime. And he even says in the song that he understands why they do this, and he also understands why his ancestors prayed for them, because they knew that the way that things were going for them was going to affect them for hundreds of years to come. In terms of what you are hearing in the song, obviously you hear music, but at the beginning of the song you hear him playing the flute, and then you can hear it along with like a more modern type beat, and you hear him rapping, and then every now and again you do hear the flute come back, so it'll like kind of go into him rapping, and then after he's done rapping, the flute will come back, and it's kind of like the main melody, and then it'll go back to him rapping, and it ends with the flute playing. And he also does rap in a different language at the beginning of his second verse. I'm not sure exactly what language it is, but I'm sure it has to do with his tribe. What you are seeing in the music video, at the beginning, the camera pans down and goes onto a sign that shows you're at the res, and you can see that there's like spray paint on it. I couldn't exactly read what it says. And then it cuts to Frank playing the flute, and he's just kind of walking around the res, and it's showing what the res looks like. And you'll see animals like horses and bison. In the beginning, you see horses, and then throughout some of his verses where he's rapping, you see bison behind him, and at the end, you see horses again. It shows kind of like his neighborhood, and it's just there's a huge flagpole with it looks like an American flag, but there's something else on it, and it pans down into like there's like 2 trailers and 2 RVs. And then you can see him rapping in like a very outdated park. So there's like soccer nets and a couple of swing sets that are just super rusty and old. It's a very low populated area. You don't see very many people. You barely even see cars driving the highway. But there's a lot of beautiful land, and it's been maintained well. It's very pretty. Lots of grass, lots of flowers, and things like that. The function of the song was to educate, to self-express, and to get his message across and allow it to be around forever. What I mean by educate is he is educating people on how reservations are no better than concentration camps, and they're just a way to quiet him and his people, and that they have had to deal with the backlash of reservations and how poorly they're treated and how low their funding is, and how it is basically feels like a concentration camp to him. And what I mean by to self-express is he is talking about his own experiences and how he sees the reservation affecting him and his family. And by getting by getting his message across and allowing it to be around forever, I just mean it's on the internet, it's going to always be there, and he's also making an attempt to get more ears to listen to what he is trying to portray. This leads me to my first chorus theme, which is survivance. The music will always be allowed to be out there, and the message that Frank is portraying will be allowed to be relevant. Just because it is 22 and things have changed doesn't mean that this shouldn't be addressed and that there still shouldn't be education about it. Since the music is on the internet, it will always be out there, and that will help it survive. And he is making it relevant now that just because things have changed and that they're still not experiencing as terrible things from the colonizers, they still are being affected from the terrible things that happened back in the day to this day. The second chorus theme I noticed was colonialism. The entire song is about how being colonized directly impacts him and his people to this day. A quote from the song is, "Concentrating the trauma of genocide up in a nation. The system murders us, call it premeditation. Tragic death becomes a circumstance. They outloud our songs and won't let us dance." So he obviously they is colonizers, and they were having to deal with this trauma of genocide, and they're saying that the system is basically setting them up for failure, so you might as well call it premeditation. So they're almost still being colonized at this point without even being colonized, because there's such a huge impact of what happened in the past on them today. The last chorus theme I'm going to be talking about is cultural identity. I think that the song is all about identity, and not only Frank's identity, but the identity of his people. He talks about how his people end up in jail or on drugs, and he says that he understands why, given the circumstances. He has lived this life and knows how easy it could be to give up. He also mentions that he understands why his ancestors prayed, and I think this is him almost saying that he also prays for his people and hopes the best for them. And I think that's a huge part of his cultural identity, because he was raised in this environment and he doesn't want to see it crumble. And he thinks that, him helping is something that will be able to change the situation that he was given. How does this piece impact me personally? Well, I grew up only really knowing about the casino type reservations. So I never really knew about the struggles of Native American people until I was a senior in high school, and that didn't even really cover the full extent of it. And I also want to know a lot more about this culture, and I want to know what I can do personally to make things right. I know that I could, correct people when they bring up stereotypes. I can do better to learn more about not only Native Americans, but other people before I have any predispositions about them. And honestly, I just am really impacted by this song because it's really powerful, and it definitely speaks volumes on how greatly these people have been affected by what was done to them in the past, and how we can't just let go of it, and we need to continue to try and fix the problem instead of just put it away.